It's always the Germans.
All right, Matt Gouge, Get Better Everyday podcast. I'm excited to have Adrian Koehler. Did I say that right? Nailed
You
it.
did.
On the podcast.
Gouge, you're so fancy.
Yes, sir. So fancy. So I'm excited, man, as somebody who's actively involved in coaching in our business here at U Mortgage, as someone who's had coaches for years and years. I'm a big fan of coaching in all ways. I know you do it with executives and leadership and founders of companies. So
Yeah,
let's jump right in. Let's get to know a little bit about you. Tell us
sure.
about that gig and what led you there.
Yeah, love what I get to do every day. So I've been a coach for coming up on 15 years now in this way. I think I've been a coach since I can remember, but I've been coaching like this for about 15 years. I have a company with a dear friend of mine who's a business partner. His name is Dan Tacchini. He's a world-class coach, best in the world at training leaders. And he's like, if Mother Teresa and Yoda and Tony Soprano had a baby, that's Dan Tacchini. So picture that for a second. And we have got a firm called Take New Ground, where we spend a lot of our time coaching and then training leaders, training leadership teams. We have a consulting arm too, and we own a bunch of stuff. And anyway, awesome. But what do? We're fierce advocates for our people, which sets us apart because we're not like pat on the back type coaches. We're not like, let me go teach you 15 things type coaches. Both of those are essential. Both of those are necessary, but both of them don't do what we do. We get to the heart of the matter rather quickly. So to be a coach on our team, you got to have a lot of guts, and most coaches aren't like that. If you saw my website, most coaching is bullshit. Most trainings, most offsites are bullshit. Most assessments are bullshit. We think the market's lame in general. So that's what sets us apart. I'm like the smelling salts for the founder class. Love doing that. I've gotten into that work. This is like my fourth transition. I think I'll be here till I die. I started out as I was like a pre-med guy, then actually got a nursing degree and worked in the intensive care unit. So being mostly pediatrics, so being with kids that were on the brink of death, being with families that were on the brink of psychological, emotional death, obviously the worst day in their lives. So being able to order that chaos and bring people together for a common goal, which is the health and wellness of their kid. And then I was a pastor for several years, so that makes me weird. But I was an activist, right? So my job, I don't think there's a greater vision in the world than to go put the world back together. And for me, that's what it was about. And partnering with some kind of supernatural something, but even partnering with 2,000 people to go put the world back together, that's what got me up every day. And I'd build teams and send teams out both locally and globally. So I got to spend most of my 20s on the road doing really fun, amazing third world, partnering with, fancy people all the way to, giving hugs to homeless people. I did that for a long time. And then I actually was asked to start a foundation with a guy put, $10 million in the bank and said, would you help me give this away? And I said, that sounds like fun. So we did work, long story, very short. We worked in the prison system. And that's when I met this guy, Dan Tacchini. I'd met all these murderers in prison and needed to know what to do with them. Dan knew what to do, because he'd created a program that it took the recidivism rate is like, what the likeliness of you going back to prison, average 97%. If you go through Dan's program, it goes down to 12%. So breathtaking work. I won't get into details now. So I cut my teeth as a coach, coaching murderers in prison. And so now when I, coach some kind of arrogant founder, I'm like, dude, you got nothing, man. You think I'm scared?
You ain't tough, Matt.
You think I'm scared of you? You think I'm scared of you? So anyway, and I've been doing this for, 13 years. So love doing what I get to do. Love it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's a lot of stuff. And as I'm thinking about it, it's fascinating to me, when somebody gets to a place in their life where they're passionate and they're skillful and they're able to add difference. It's from a collection of, background, the things you've done. And it's a little bit of all your experiences, from being a pastor to working, coaching in the prison and whatnot. So, I'd love
when I first started coaching, I was scared. People would say, how'd you get into this? Because it took me a while just to own it, and the reality is I've been through lots of different things, and I always followed what I was passionate about, and opportunities always kind of found me, quote unquote. I never applied for a job. It was like something just happened, and I threw myself wholeheartedly into it until it was done. And then I moved on to the next thing. And I remember the first guy that ever told me, oh, no, I'm hiring you because you have a master's in theology. That makes you really weird. I actually want to get close to somebody like that, and they don't know anybody that thinks about the world in that way, or thinks of, it's like holding a mother's hand as their child dies. Who gets to do that? That's heartbreaking. And if you can hang in that context, and if you can bring yourself back to the surface, let alone bring people back to the surface, it's obviously applicable in any kind of chaos in the world.
Right. Yeah. And that's a word you mentioned, chaos. So I'd love to dig into that because, I think about it in my own personal business. I've got entrepreneurial friends. When you're growing a company, when you're doing anything entrepreneurial, it is absolute effing chaos, right?
It is chaos. Yeah.
At a lot of times. So give us a little bit of coaching here, if you would, for the Get Better Everyday listener on, how do you sort through that? There's probably hundreds of examples you could give of, specifics, but, as a founder who's 3 years in, you've got your end client, you've got your referral partners, you've got internal HR things to handle. Like, how does somebody navigate that chaos?
Yeah. Well, first off, you got to own reality that it is chaos, and it's meant to be chaos, so, and if you're doing a great job, it's chaos, because opportunities are chaos, right? I mean, if we talk about what is chaos, chaos is like unbridled possibilities and tragedies baked all in this big mob. We don't know what it is yet. Most people can't be an entrepreneur because they see opportunities as threats, because that's the way opportunities are to our brain. Anything that's new is naturally a threat to us because it's not like the norm. And our brain uses history as a reference point for making sense of reality. But naturally, entrepreneurs see the future as a reference point for what, how to make sense of this thing, right? So first off, realize chaos is normal, and don't get caught up in like the victim stance that it ought not be the way it is. No, if you're great, it's going to be chaotic. And if you're honest, it's going to be chaotic. And if you actually have, especially if you have high-minded people, it's going to be chaotic, because it's not just you running your little tyranny or you running your little cult there. You've assembled 5 or 6 people that all have their own opinions, and they're not going to get in line. If you've done a good job, they're actually going to push back and they're going to challenge. And so, if you've done a great job, it's chaotic. So that's the first thing, is like, want the chaos. And if you become, I know for me, when things get chaotic, I calm down, because I know the most powerful person in the room is the one that's the most steady in the midst of the storm, and the one that can slow down and speak right to the storm. And first off, own the fact that there's a storm happening. And if you can claim current reality like that, you're already got a leg up. So that's first off, because if you're, everybody that's listening to this, really smart, really ambitious, really action oriented, and if you're that person, the people on your team are less comfortable than you are. So you need to exhibit comfort in the discomfort, if you will. It's like, okay, this is all very uncomfortable, and of course we'd love it to be clean and clear, but it's not. So we got to start an exploratory process here. But first off, slow down, take a breath, stay with me. And a great leader will do that. And so good. Now, what do we have here is the next question. What is it? What do we have here? And there's parts of the chaos that are going to be beneficial, and there's parts of the chaos that are going to be soap opera and bullshitty. Right. So you gotta, with trusted thought partners, let's get on the same side of the table. The distinction is the difference between chaos and things that are complicated. Relational sense makes things complicated. But if you guys get on, so like if it's adversarial, right? If you're now fighting your head of sales about something and you're on the opposite sides of the table, that's a bad strategy. What you want to do is generate a conversation where you're on the same side of the table looking at the chaos together. And although it might look like you've got 2 different opinions, you're battling about the vision for the company or the sales goal or whatever, get on the same side of the table, because then you can advocate for, let's make a distinction between, what are our personal interests? We have different personal interests, and let's get clear about what those are and give a lot of grace and openness to that, and realize that every person's got their own view, and make that view distinct. People will be less squirrely. People will be less adversarial. They'll be less resentful if they get that you see what they care about and you also happen to care about it, right? So you get on the same side of the table, look at the chaos together, and then you can bifurcate out at least what's resourceful and what's not resourceful. And let's not get tied into the soap opera, which people love to do, the brain loves to do, because it's nice and distracting and you get to be superior and people are idiots and blah, blah, blah. Get out of that. Let's say, how do we look at this thing in a way that generates a conversation where I get to see what is fueling my future and what is competing with my future. And if you can do that, now we've already, the chaos isn't the chaos anymore, right? Because now we've stacked ranked it. We know what's important. We know what we're doing. We know what we're not doing. And if you stay committed to doing what's resourceful, and you stay committed to not following the rabbit into the woods. That's always the metaphor for me. It's like, there's a rabbit running into the woods. Don't chase the rabbit. No, we let that go. Let that go. And you just focus on what's most important to you. Then all of a sudden, you find out who's on your side. You find out who's trustworthy. You find out who you want to be in a foxhole with. And then you get to look at things together and then stack rank. If you've got an aim, if you got a vision, it naturally prioritizes the conversation, right? So if you don't have a vision, then you got trouble, then you got chaos, and the vision actually is chaos. But if you have an aim, it actually orders the chaos. So you'll find people that want to live with an aim. That's very distinct than people that want to do a job. No, people that want to live out their commitments, or what I would say, live their word, be willing to give their word. Here's the future that I'm committed to create no matter what. I don't care about circumstances. I don't care about my history. I don't care about the current relational dynamics. I know where I'm going no matter what, being able to, what we call, take a stand for something. But so the chaos is a gift because it reveals the people in the conversation. So if you're in that real conversation about the future in the face of chaos with people that you vetted and they're with you, and whenever something comes up where they're not with you, you vet it immediately. Let's talk about it. Trust your intuition. Have a conversation when things are at the level of a shit hors d'oeuvre or a shit sandwich. Don't wait for the shit buffet. Talk about it now, right? Talk about it now and keep things really clean. And then the chaos isn't a threat to your vision. It's actually the platform in which your vision gets to be really enhanced. And I would say really beautiful.
Yeah, I love all that, dude. I mean, I wrote down a couple notes. The strongest person in the room is the calmest person in the room.
Right on.
And I think that, you talk about stress, right?
Yep.
And as a married man with kids, there's family stress and there's work stress, and I think both of them, have their place. They can both be overwhelming, right? And thinking about being the calmest person in the room, probably in both situations, to be honest, right? Sometimes I got to be the calmest person in my household when things are going awry.
Your family needs that, man. Needs to be the one. It's I can trust dad. No matter what's going on, dad stays cool.
Yeah. That's the hope. I think that I want to pull on this one a little bit more because I'm thinking about this, and not specific to me or you, Mortgage, or anything, but just thinking about company dynamic. I like what you said, where when there's a clear vision and, we've got where we're trying to go, executive leadership, everybody's on the same page. If you have, dissension might not be the right word, but if you've got, a 600 person, 800 person company, and not everybody necessarily agrees on that, how do you order that chaos? And I know it starts with the leadership. And so I'm sure you've got experience, coaching into them, how to make sure it trickles down.
Yeah, so I've got a podcast called the Naked Leadership Podcast, and we just recorded today an episode that'll drop early January around goal setting, quote unquote. And we don't talk about goal setting in my work. We talk about the same idea, but we don't talk about goals because usually people do not relate well to goals. They're usually just kind of bullshit fantasies. I'd rather say, what new results am I committed to create? Very different conversation than what's the goal. People are just not related to goals. It's loose, and it's usually this kind of, at least what I was ranting about on the podcast today was, people usually think really romantically about goals. And it's almost like who's got the most guts or pizzazz to say the biggest, craziest goal, right? And that actually wins, quote unquote, wins in that room. But it doesn't win in reality, because what you need to also do is, we talk about it all day long, man, is because everybody has a relationship to the future. How excited are they? How engaged are they in the future? And everybody has a relationship to reality, like current reality. And it's so easy for us to be really even committed or act committed or be really audacious about the future. But man, everybody struggles with getting really sober about reality. What's really working, what's right now, what's really not working right now, what's wanted and needed right now. And so the point being is that if you got people, you got 6 people in a room. Let's just say you got 6 people in a room, and you're going to talk about the future. There's dissension. There's at least people not being 100% in, and most people, most leaders, based on insecurity, will not go explore to find out what the conversations are that are generating the desire for somebody to be less than fully engaged. And I said in the podcast today, I said, if you set a goal, you ought to slow down after that and say, hold on, everybody gets now to play devil's advocate. Who thinks this is BS? Who thinks we can't do this? And not like as an invitation, like, what are the reasons why we might not get to our goals? Nobody vets that like that. And that takes some courage to do that, because you're going to get some feedback you probably know is coming, feedback you've probably been actively avoiding. But, it's going to reveal where people are at the table. And that's a gift. That's a gift. So that's what I'd say first is, like, if you're going to set it down, there is going to be dissension. You want to go find out what that is. First off, it honors people's viewpoints. And if you got, high charging people, hard charging people, type A people, they want to be distinct. They want to be seen as distinct, and you pay them for their ideas as well as their action and their delivery. So you want to generate that environment where it's not dissension, it's just distinction. So let's find out how to set the goals that are actually accurate based on what we're willing to do, willing to pay the price to get here. And so it's a phenomenal opportunity to get real-time feedback around the strategy, around the mechanisms and all that. But the best stuff is really around what's not working on the team.
Yeah, I love that.
Set your goals and actually be willing to have a very developmental conversation about it. But you got to set that up. You got to set, people are not going to do that. They're going to naturally survive by looking good. The 4 survival needs are looking good, feeling good, being right, being in control. People are going to sit back as a skeptic and just sit on the sidelines and just whistle their way through and then talk shit about you after you leave the room. So just invite that to happen in the room.
Right. Yeah. This sounds amazing. And what I'm getting from you, without ever listening to the podcast or seeing your work, I'm going to check out the Naked Leadership podcast, but
do it.
This is a total shot in the dark, and it might not be correct, but when you're talking about naked, vulnerable, and
yes.
and everything you've talked about working with companies sounds like communication that, like, I can verify as somebody who's been entrepreneurial and been involved in the start of companies. Like, the conversations aren't being had, because to your point, like, everything's working relatively good. Yeah, we're going to have some conversations and things aren't falling apart. So it's all good, versus, like you said, dig in, be really honest, like, pull feedback out of people if need be, and say, what are the reasons why we're not going to get here, or this isn't going to work, or our vision needs to be, tweaked or modified, or whatever the case may be. So that's all gold, man. I'm learning a lot today.
I'm with you. When I say naked leadership, I mean vulnerable. I mean somebody that's willing to take a risk. Because that's the only type of leadership that I'll follow. If somebody's just up there doing a song and dance, I'm going to sniff that out, and I'm going to be like, okay, I'm not going to pay much attention to them, because they're not authentic, right? They're not. And listen, we're all not authentic. We all lie to ourselves often, if not constantly, and lying to other people, at least with not giving 100% the full truth. And, the best leaders I'm going to follow are people that are at least authentic about their inauthenticity. We're all very inauthentic. No big deal. Welcome to being human. But are they authentic about it? Do they know it? And are they going to, like, show that? Like, hey, I'm scared about this. I think we're going to set this goal. And I think, actually, Tom, I don't know if you're going to show up, man. Based on, and it's going to have the real conversations. Or even if you're going to tell on yourself, that's the best tool as a leader. Tell on yourself. Like, hey, I don't know if I have what it takes. If you say that, that's going to bring people to the table. They're going to perk up, because nobody says that.
Yeah.
But if you own that in front of them, it's an invitation for them, and actually sets the bar. So yeah, naked leadership is like, come on, man, let's get it. Can we act like this actually matters versus some kind of song and dance? Let's talk about the real stuff. I warn every client before I sign them, I say, there's conversations on the table in your company right now, and there's conversations under the table. The ones under the table are the ones running the show, and I can prove it. And so I'm really good at finding the conversations under the table, and that's the only place we're going. That's where we're going, at least to begin with. Because if we win that battle, if there's a breakthrough and the capacity of the team to be honest with one another, trust goes through the roof, sacrifice goes through the roof, advocacy goes through the roof, new results go through the roof, because the conversations under the table are dying to be had, and if you give them what they want, it brings people together.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Gets me excited. Gets me thinking, like, who do I need to talk to? Who do I need to,
I know.
get together in a room to have these open, naked conversations. I wrote this down, and this is going to be released in early 2024. So I think it's perfect for people that are committing to goals, or not even committing to goals. They're just writing, I want to do this much in volume. I want to make this much money. And then they'll put a picture of a house and a picture of a car and their dream vacation. What you said, what new results am I committed to create? And literally, as somebody who coaches loan officers, I remind them, like, closings and commissions are dependent events, right? Like, you've got dependent events that, like, you have to do. You have to have meaningful conversations. You have to set appointments, and the metrics over time in any sales organization pan out, right? And so depending on what you're committed to do action-wise, I can tell you what your result's going to be. And it's not just a matter of setting a number and saying, I'd love to make 250 grand. Well, great, right? What are you committed to do? What new results am I committed to create? That is something I wrote down. I appreciate you spotlighting that. Just wanted to remind the Get Better Everyday listeners, no matter what you're doing in 2024, you want to lose weight, you want to make more money, you want, your relationships to be better. You can't expect to just say, the end of Q1 2024, I want to weigh 195 pounds, currently weigh 217, right? If the actions for those 90 days don't align with that goal, then it's just a dream.
Yeah. I mean, the phrase in my head is like, go ahead and just be the cause in the matter. You could wait and hope that the stars align and the circumstances line up and other people do other stuff. That's fine. That's really normal. But that generates so much despair, because we know we've decided we're not powerful, or we're not worth it, or something like that. But just decide to be the cause in the matter, that something's going to happen just because I say so. That's it. And that's taking a stand for something. That's actually, giving a promise. It's staking a claim. It's putting a stake in the ground and saying, you know what? I matter. My voice matters here. And I'm just deciding that's what's going to happen. I'll do whatever it takes. I mean, if people get to that, whatever it takes, I mean, there's a commitment ladder we talk about, which I won't go through for the sake of time. But the top rung of that ladder, like the most committed, is just to say that it's going to happen, and I'll do whatever it takes to make that happen.
Yeah. Which we both know most people aren't on that top rung.
No.
Most people are like, I'd love to have that. The end.
Yeah, I'd like to, and I will until. These are different rungs in the ladder. I will until, or unless this, and it's like they give themselves all these escape hatches. And especially in this day and age in our culture, we're so soft as a culture. Like, people are now so scared of I don't know, I was going to say the masculine voice, but just a strong voice. They're so scared of that, and they don't want to offend anybody. But meanwhile, we're just whistling on the way to the grave. Like, come on, like, get after it. It's okay. Whatever that is, and sometimes it's the soft voice that makes a big difference, because maybe it's a gregarious culture, and somebody that's really sincere and really willing to see other people and really willing to connect deeply and really willing to suffer, and instead of prolonging, the pain, let's just suffer really well right now. Like, maybe we need to fire somebody, and that would really hurt. That would be hard, heartbreaking, but that's the best thing to do, is to, like, take on the pain right now.
Right. Yeah. Awesome stuff, man. Before we wrap it up, because I know we're running on the last few minutes here. I have to ask about the English is such a hard recidivism rate.
Yeah.
97% to 12%. I would love just a couple minutes on what type of work was involved there. A lot of things in this beautiful world fascinate me. I think, prison and the current system and the brokenness of it is one thing. So tell me a little bit about that work.
Sure. Well, we know that prisons are criminal factories in general, right? So whatever level of criminal you come in, you're actually going to get worse. And we've set the whole system up to be that way. And I'll try to do this in 30 seconds. So people get worse when they get in, and their vision when they're in is just to get out. They don't actually have a vision for their future. They don't have a vision for themselves. And so we would run these trainings, these 3-day trainings called Ready for Life. It's been approved to be in every criminal justice facility in the U.S. because of its effectiveness. It was crafted by this guy, Dan Tacchini. You guys ought to search Dan Tacchini and find out him, or go to takenewground.com and look up Dan. He's an OG. He doesn't mess around. The core of that training, if I just tell a bumper sticker, the core of that training is one exercise called Victim Responsible. So it's where they tell their story. We set them in dyads. They tell their story about how they got into prison, right? Great. They're going to do their thing. And then we talk about what is it like to play the victim in life. We talk about what that is, play the victim. We all know what that's like. It's not like be victimized, but to play the victim. What's that like to play the victim? Okay, good. Now you got to tell your same story you just told them, but you have to convince the listener that you're the victim. Not very hard for us, by the way. Easy to put on the soap opera and blame mom and dad and blame the color of my skin and what neighborhood and what the gang is, blah, blah, blah. Super easy. Play the victim and convince the other person that you're the victim, number one. Now we talk about what is be responsible. To take ownership that I'm actually in prison because I want to be in prison. In prison because I want to be in prison. I chose to be here. Now you got to go back in time a little bit. Like, when did I choose to join the gang instead of go to grandma's house? When did I choose to show up to that party instead of doing what I knew was going to be trouble? When did I choose to pack my gun instead of, you got to get clear about all those decisions you made all along the way. If you do that, there's actually a different experience, because we clock the difference between playing the victim, which I feel small, feel angry, feel nothing, feel cold, feel apathetic. What's it like to feel responsible? I feel free. Like I'm no longer here to prove anything. I'm actually here just to own it and then to move on, because I'm free to generate the future if I'm in a responsible stance. And that's the big distinction that most people in life don't get to, let alone murderers. And man, they all got out of prison the next time they went to the parole board after, they all 100%. And if you want to, last thing before I got to go, if you go to Naked Leadership Podcast, you can listen to a conversation about this with a guy that went through Richard Morales. He went through the process. Now he's out. Now he's got his own nonprofit called CROP, C-R-O-P. I forget what the acronym stands for. They just got awarded $20 million in the California budget to do this work because it works.
Yeah. And it helps everybody, right? It helps everybody, society as a whole. So I know you got to run, man. I appreciate your time. It was great. The Naked Leadership Podcast, takenewground.com. Where else can people find you? What else do we want to shout out before we shut it down?
Well, the biggest thing is, if you're interested at all in this type of commitment, this type of advocacy, come to the Revenant process. It's a 4-day personal deep dive. You'd love it, Matt. And the next one's in Boise in February. Just go to We Are Revenant, Revenant, wearerevenant.com. And we'll jump in this conversation for 4 days, and I promise you will be quickened to life.
Yeah. I love it, man. I love it. Thanks again for your time, man. Thanks for joining me.
You got it. All right. See you, buddy.
Take care. Bye-bye.